Everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we're back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be a full-on review of Batwoman Season 3. Now there will be spoilers within this review, so just beware when going to this overall video, and you can check out my reviews of the previous 2 seasons of the show, and I'll leave some links within the description. Now just to recap on the events of the previous season, we of course had Kate Kane having removed her Siri influence, deciding to leave Gotham for good, handing over full Batwoman duties to Ryan Wilder. Alice had been arrested for her previous crimes and had told Ryan that she knew of her biological mother. Luke had discovered his father's AI within the Batwing suit, and after all of the chaos of Black Mask, all of Gotham's most famous villains had been unleashed within the city. And that's where this season picked up, with Ryan now fully confirmed as the only Batwoman, working alongside Mary, Sophie and Luke, tracking down all of the various criminals within Gotham City. We saw the emergence of Lieutenant Renee Montoya looking to combat the crime within Gotham. She does this by arranging Alice to leave Arkham in order to work with Team Batwoman to track down all of the criminals and their dangerous weapons of mass destruction. We also see the emergence of Ryan's mother, Jada Jet, CEO of Jet Industries, and we follow the story as the two try to connect together throughout the season. Things become even more complicated with Jada's son and Ryan's brother Marcus, who over the season we see much changing dynamics within all of their relationships. He eventually goes on to become one of the main antagonists throughout the season. Mary goes through certain tribulations when consumed under the influence of Poison Ivy's plants and adopts for a short time the villainous persona of the character. And we explore the growing attraction and relationship between both Sophie and Ryan, which eventually leads to them getting together. So after a much maligned season 2 where I stated it was definitely lacking in certain creativity and imagination, would season 3 prove to be a considerable improvement of the show? Well, on the one hand, it definitely was an improvement, though I would only say marginally so. On the positive side, Ryan Wilder was now front and centre the main lead of the show after being sidelined by narratives surrounding both Kate Kane and Alice without the previous season. Javicia Leslie continues to be a far stronger screen presence than what Ruby Rose was, and I'd also say that there's nothing wrong with any of the other actors within their roles, which would be expected by now after 2 seasons together. At the very least, you could say that they have very strong chemistry and energy together on screen. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the same issues that we had last season continue to appear throughout this year in terms of the weak storytelling and the lackluster villains as well. This year, we saw a lot of concentration on Batman's Rogues Gallery, where in the opening episodes, we saw the likes of the Mad Hatter, Killer Croc and Professor Pig. And once again, this highlighted very much the lack of substantial villains within Batwoman's own universe. And the involvement of these villains were very much more standalone installments, lacking any real compelling story, which I think overall was very much of a letdown, especially if you were a major fan of these particular antagonists. The most substantial narrative that we got throughout the show involved Poison Ivy, where we learned of Montoya's ulterior motives in wanting to connect with Ivy, of whom she had a previous relationship with. And this arc overall gave Mary the most substantial development in terms of a character throughout the entire season. What was also noticeable throughout this season was Alice's decreasing involvement within the story. In season 2, things were very much weighed heavily in her favour, I think too much overall, whereas this season they really struggled to justify her existence within the story. I said that her arc was complete last season and she easily could have exited from the show, but because of Rachel Skarsten's heavy popularity in terms of viewers, the showrunners have to continually find reasons or excuses to keep Alice involved within the show. So throughout the season we continually had implausible reasons for Alice leaving Arkham despite all of her crimes. For very much like last season, there was some big attempt to have some sort of redemptive arc for Alice, but overall it's not very convincing. Now I know Rachel Skarsten is very well liked within the role of Alice and she performs very well throughout this series, but keeping Alice around at this stage really doesn't make a whole lot of sense at this point within the story. It just takes away a lot of credibility away from the show, having to come up with further excuses just to keep Alice involved within the narrative. We then have to talk about what's without question the worst part of the entire season, and that is Marcus Jet and his overall storyline. Initially somewhat of a decent introduction, and there was some sprightly dynamic between him and Ryan, as he very much concentrated on the power struggle within the company between him and his mother. The character was then completely thrown to waste with this ridiculous Joker-like personality, where we learned that when he was young, he was on the same bus as what Alice was, when the Joker apprehended all of the kids within the bus, causing the initial crash on the bridge, as what we remember from the opening sequence of the show back in season 1, and this resulted in the Joker putting his hand buzzer on Marcus, and this brought out the crazy psychotic tendencies inside him that had been developing all throughout his childhood. where we learn that Jada has been carrying out various initiatives in order to try and suppress this psychosis within Marcus. And things just reach higher levels of silliness when Marcus starts dyeing his hair purple. So even though he's not Joker in terms of name, the intention is clearly there in terms of presenting this as a version of the Joker, and it's completely stupid and once again just highlights the lack of imagination in creating worthwhile characters and antagonists for the story. Again, it's not a majorly fault of the actor itself, it's just again a fault of the writing by the showrunners. So really we had once again lots of flaws in terms of the storytelling, and this is despite the fact that this was a reduced season running at only 13 episodes. Normally the show runs at 22 episodes, but had to be cut short due to COVID, of course. So at this stage you really wonder where else they can take this show if they indeed get a 4th season. In all likelihood it probably will get renewed for a 4th season, especially when we look at the season finale itself, which was a very substandard episode. It ended on a cliffhanger where after Marcus initiated a blip carrying Joker's lethal gas over the city, they managed to change the course of the blip and have it detonate over a non-populated area. And then in the final scene where some reporters were reporting on the event, there seemed to be a zombie emerging as it killed the reporters on the case. So they definitely left things open to be continued for a 4th season. So whilst there hasn't been any announcement, I think if this was definitely the final season, they would have gone for a much more of a resolved storyline. And whilst there hasn't been a formal announcement yet as the time of making this video, I would expect an announcement very soon. And if we do get a 4th season, I probably would imagine it would be the last due to the continued decline in the ratings. And I'd also think that it will probably end up being another 13 episode season. Normally is the case whenever a show reaches the final season on the CW, it tends to have reduced episodes. So if I had to give an overall score for Batwoman Season 3, I would give it a 5.2 out of 10. Yes, it was an improvement over Season 2, but it's still very much lacking in terms of its storytelling. And we really do have to ask the question now, after 3 seasons, will the show ever rise above its average, very mediocre level that is currently standing at? I'm not quite so sure now. 3 seasons now in, you would expect to see some sort of improvement by now, an upward trajectory in terms of the show's quality, but we're just not seeing that. And I think overall it's just down to the writing. As I mentioned before, I think the actors perform their roles very well. They show a very good chemistry together, but unfortunately they're just hindered by a continued lack of imagination in terms of the storytelling and underdeveloped antagonists, and it continues to keep the show from reaching any kind of potential in terms of its quality. So those were overall thoughts and feelings and review of Batwoman Season 3. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you've managed to watch all of the episodes, do you think this has been an improvement, or do you think it's been a further decline within the quality of the show? And if the show manages to get a 4th season, do you think it should indeed be the last? And should it be a reduced season overall? And do you think there's even a further possibility that the show could somehow get a full 4th season and even reach to a 5th season, no matter how unlikely it would be? Let me know what you think in the comments as well. Please consider hitting like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.